What's up, Taiwan? I'm Liao with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has been arrested for crimes against humanity after a warrant was issued by the International Criminal Court. The ICC is investigating Duterte over his bloody war on drugs while in office. But as Gino Lopez reports, many in the country see his arrest as politically motivated.
An unusual reception at this Manila airport for former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte. Typically greeted with fanfare by officials, this time detained by police. His arrest warrant issued by the International Criminal Court citing crimes against humanity related to his bloody war on drugs. The Philippines Presidential Office says Interpol sent the request to arrest Duterte earlier Tuesday morning. The former leader defiant.
What is the law and what is the crime that I committed? Show to me now the legal basis for my being here.
By some estimates, as many as 30,000 people were killed during Duterte's anti-drug campaign during his time in office, which started in 2016. Human rights groups accuse his administration of targeting unarmed suspects and planting evidence, allegations that he denies. The ICC launched its investigation in 2018, prompting Duterte to withdraw the Philippines from the court. But his successor, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., has indicated Duterte could be handed over to ICC officials, something his lawyer rejects.
Sumusunod tayo sa isang entity na hindi na tayo member. Nag-withdraw na tayo. And yet, sir, you are the Prosecutor General. Yes. You know how to exercise due process.
Outside the airport where he was arrested, his supporters gathered, calling his arrest politically motivated. Though controversial, Duterte remains popular among many Filipinos, including those living overseas, with his recent appearance in Hong Kong drawing hundreds of admirers. Analysts say his arrest is the result of years of pressure from human rights groups, as well as fallout from a feud between the Duterte and Marcos families, once ironclad political allies, now bitter rivals.
The Marcos administration has been hanging that this Damocles sword, this possible punishment, this negotiation chip that up until the last moment, he's been dragging his feet and he's saying that he'll do this. And up until this moment, the Dutertes are not willing to compromise.
Duterte's arrest is the start of what many view as the path to justice, but what others say is a witch hunt. With the former president now in custody, the country waits to see whether he will be sent to The Hague to stand trial. Chris Ma and Gino Lopez for TaiwanPlus.
Stock markets tumbled across much of Asia on Tuesday, including here in Taiwan. The sharp drop-off reflects investor concern about tariffs and a possible U.S. recession sparked by comments from U.S. President Donald Trump about his economic policies. Chris Gordon brings us this report.
Stocks are down in many of Asia's markets following a major tumble on Wall Street. Here in Taiwan, the main stock index, the TAIEX, closed down 1.73% on Tuesday, with tech stocks being particularly hard hit. Shares in chip giant TSMC, which tends to lead Taiwan's stock market, ended down 2.71%. Another major tech company, Foxconn, was also down just over 2%. Meanwhile, Japan's Nikkei and South Korea's Kospi were also down, while Hong Kong and Shanghai markets were slightly up. So what's causing all of this? Well, many people are pointing to a TV interview given by U.S. President Donald Trump where he refused to rule out the possibility of a U.S. economic recession.
But are you expecting a recession this year?
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition.
Can you give us a sense of whether or not we are going to get clarity for the business community?
Well, I think so, but the tariffs could go up as time goes by, and they may go up, and I don't know if it's predictability. I think
so. That's not clarity.
Refusing to rule out a recession is quite a shocking thing to hear from a U.S. president presiding over an otherwise pretty good economy. Now, that interview broadcast on Sunday, and by Monday, investors were already reacting strongly. All of the major indexes in the New York Stock Exchange dropped significantly. The Dow and S&P 500 both had their worst day of the year. and the tech-heavy NASDAQ had its worst day since 2022. And since Taiwan's stock market is led by tech companies, that also has a strong impact here. Of course, there are always many factors in play, but uncertainty is likely the main culprit here. It's not just that investors don't like tariffs, but Donald Trump hasn't even been consistent about if or when the tariffs will take effect. One day they're on, the next day they're off. Businesses and investors like predictability and stability. But with the back and forth on tariffs and Trump's refusal to rule out a U.S. recession, that's certainly not what they're getting. Klein Wong and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
The military is tracking service members who have taken Chinese citizenship. And as John Van Triest reports, even conscripts with Chinese national ID cards now face scrutiny.
The military is on the lookout for soldiers holding one of these Chinese ID cards, a sign they've naturalized as Chinese citizens, and therefore technically lost their rights as Taiwanese nationals. China claims Taiwan and often threatens to invade it to bring it under control. And reports last month that a Navy member had a Chinese ID card set off an alarm, with questions about whether China could be infiltrating the military under commanders' noses. Career soldiers and officers must now declare and then give up their Chinese IDs. But there's a problem. Taiwan's military still relies on conscripts to fill its ranks, a harder and harder task as low birth rates lead to population decline. So while the military is also gathering info on conscripts with these Chinese IDs, it is decided that having one isn't an excuse to get out of military service. They may have lost their rights as Taiwanese, but not their obligations. This delicate situation has drawn reactions from across the political spectrum.
也请国防部来去做彻底的来彻查之外，那也去研拟一些相关的配套，来确保国家安全能够被守护。
我们也不要特别去预设立场，说这些有其他国家身份的役男都一定会去免费的去做所谓的间谍活动。
Meanwhile, those who understand the military's workings say there are steps that can lessen the risk of spying or sabotage.
或许呢，可以让这些士兵从事比较单一的任务，譬如说你就是驾驶或运输，减少接触一下军事机密性。
Whether or not this is viable, the government is tightening security in other ways too. Civilian government employees must also declare and give up Chinese IDs. And within the military, rules are getting stricter. Anyone who signs documents or makes videos pledging allegiance to China could soon face up to 7 years in prison. The goal is to remove the risks of infiltration and make sure those who make their living serving the country stay loyal to it. Kama Xu and John Van Triest for TaiwanPlus.
Russia says it's shot down 73 Ukrainian drones headed for Moscow. The governor of the Moscow region says at least 2 people were killed and 3 more wounded in the drone attack, the largest on the Russian capital in months. The strike comes as Ukraine and the U.S. prepare to discuss ending the 3-year war. Russia says it also jammed or shot down Ukrainian drones targeting other parts of the country. Was it incompetence? Experts see human error as the most likely cause of a collision between a cargo ship and an oil tanker in Europe's North Sea on Monday. Whatever the cause, the result is a developing environmental disaster. Sandy Chi reports.
Thick smoke rises off England's coast. Here, the Portuguese-flagged cargo ship Solong slammed into the Stena Immaculate, a U.S. military-chartered jet fuel tanker on Monday, bursting into flames and dumping fuel, oil and chemicals into the North Sea.
It is unusual that this accident happened because the Stena vessel, full of aviation fuel, was at anchor, and the Portuguese vessel, the Solong, basically powered into her. Now, there were reports of fog earlier, but modern ships have anti-collision systems, they have radar and so on.
Some sources say all 37 crew members were rescued from the blaze. Others say one mariner is still missing. But what's certain is the chaotic scene has many experts asking, was it a failure of the ship's GPS systems, or was it simply human error?
All these vessels now have a thing called AIS, and they have positioning, and they've got every bit of kit that's known to man about how to navigate, and radars and everything. So it's a very unusual and tragic accident. There's no doubt about it.
The Solong should have avoided it, and it would be down to incompetence on behalf of Solong. There is no reason why, in the 21st century, two ships should collide.
The crash also threatens the environment. A spokesperson for the UK's Prime Minister says there's fear for the area's marine life as jet fuel from the tanker pours into the sea.
The problem with this sort of spill is that it will evaporate, which is probably good news for the ocean, not such good news for the atmosphere, but also it makes it more dangerous in terms of likely explosions. So, it has to be dealt with very carefully. And at the moment, the winds are carrying it towards the coast. I think it's highly unlikely it's going to explode when it hits the coast, but it will cause pollution incidents along the coast.
More work will go into finding out exactly why the crash happened and how bad it is for the environment. In the meantime, the UK government says it will look into how to best clean up the mess. Scott Huang and Sanny Chi for TaiwanPlus.
It's been 14 years since Japan's worst nuclear accident changed the country and the world. Cadence Quaranta looks back at the Fukushima disaster and how it impacted neighboring Taiwan.
Destruction across Japan. On March 11, 2011, the country was struck by a magnitude 9 earthquake, which triggered a massive tsunami, killing over 18,000 people and causing the second largest nuclear accident in history. Tsunami waves knocked out emergency generators at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant on Japan's east coast, sending 3 of the plant's reactors into meltdown and leading to hydrogen explosions. Radioactive material leaked out of the plant, and over 100,000 people were evacuated. As details of the disaster emerged, fear spread across to neighboring Taiwan.
People are really scared of what was happening in Japan at that time because for many Taiwanese, Japan represents a very advanced nation. It's really changed a lot of Taiwan's people's perception of the safety of nuclear energy.
In the days, weeks, and years after the accident, there was a resurgence of anti-nuclear activism in Taiwan, which had not been seen for years.
台湾这么小，我们觉得没有办法，就是不可能可以承受这些灾难。而且你想想看，福岛核灾发生之后，政府这么的无力，他根本无能力处理，所以我们台湾根本没有这样的技术，所以千万不值得一试。
At the time, Taiwan had 3 nuclear plants, with a 4th under construction. The issue was controversial, especially the 4th plant, with opinion mostly split along party lines. The Kuomintang more pro-nuclear, and the DPP generally against it. But Fukushima sparked a change in Taiwan's nuclear politics, too, leading the then-ruling KMT to become divided on this issue, according to Professor Ho of National Taiwan University. Ultimately, in 2014, following major anti-nuclear protests, the KMT government suspended the plant's construction. It was never restarted.
So you can say that around Japan's East Asian neighbors, even including Japan itself, so there have been a surge of post-Fukushima anti-nuclear mobilization. But its the biggest impact was actually in Taiwan.
In power since 2016, the DPP government pledged to phase out nuclear power by this year, 2025. Now, there's only 1 nuclear reactor still operating in Taiwan, set to be decommissioned in May. But Taiwan's high-tech economy, led by companies like TSMC, is using more power than ever, trying to replace nuclear with natural gas. It's raised questions about how much power Taiwan really needs, where that power should come from, and if the country can meet its climate goals while powering its crucial semiconductor sector.
如果没有水、没有电、没有人才，我们如何能够留得住细盾？那么很可能会有越来越多的产业和关键技术外移。核能是台湾必须要面对的一个选项。
台电的电力资讯的话，台湾真的是不缺电，那台湾缺的是绿电。
14 years after the tsunami, the mark left by the Fukushima accident is still felt, not just in Japan, but around the world. Justin Wu, Chris Gorin, and Cadence Quaranta for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Finally, we head to Greece to witness the release of this Mediterranean monk seal back into the wild after being nursed by an NGO for nearly 2 months. I'm Liao. Take care. See you next time.